needs to be firm, but not like dry or hard. Trimming. I'm going to show you guys the trimming, okay? Just pause where you are. Yeah, you can just watch and see if you can. Sorry. No, that's okay. I just want to do this so that you have it. Find the tool that I need. All right, so one of the hardest things with trimming is getting your piece back into the center. Yeah. So this piece is going to be challenging because I'm doing the one with the square top. So I can't even like start by really lining it up in the circles on the wheel head really well. So what I want to do really is have a tool, and I'll see my piece is firm enough. Sometimes I'll use a pencil for this because then I'm not actually scratching my piece. Can you see okay? Yeah, I can see okay. Okay. You can always shift your stool over if you need to. Okay, so you guys are kind of set line, set line. So one of the things I can do is like get it where I think it's mostly in the middle and then give it a spin. And I just got really lucky with this, I think. And then I'm going to go in with a tool so you guys can see. And I'm going to ease it in until it hits the side. And I just managed to get that right in the middle. So I'm going to knock it out of the middle and make things a little more challenging for myself. So let's say I set it down, and instead of doing that, now it's going back and forth a bit. So with a tool or with a pencil, honestly, you can ease this in just until it touches one of the sides. And then I know that that side is a little too close. So I'm going to go to where that scratch mark is, or a pencil mark, and I'm going to push it away from that. And I'm going to kind of seal over my mark. This is why the pencil is nice, although the pencil is hard to erase the line, but the pencil will burn away. And then I'm going to do it again. And I'm hitting with a bigger area, which means I'm a lot closer because it's almost there. Move it slightly. And it's really pretty common to not move it exactly away, so it might take you quite a few tries to get this right in the center. I'm still hitting one side more than the other. I'm going to move my marker down so I can see a little better where it is. So I always want to use, whatever tool I use, I want to keep it towards the bottom of the piece. Now if I have a lot of wonkiness on the bottom, like I can see that it's really uneven, like at the very bottom, then move it right out of that area. But I don't want to start at the top, because sometimes where the center, where the bottom is centered isn't always where the top is, especially when you put it away, sometimes you bump that top part. And this is the area that you're going to be trimming, so that's the area that you want to get in the middle. And that looks pretty good. It's got a little bit of a bump, but it's not bad. Okay, so I'm just pause it. When I look down here, I don't see a lot of like back and forth either. So now I'm going to secure this down on my wheel head. Just a bit. I'm just going to dampen that a little bit so my clay sticks. And I'm basically going to use 3 wads of clay. So I'm going to kind of pin this in place so that it can't slide easily. And these are actually called lugs. They actually have a name. So lugs of clay. I'm going to pinch them down, and what I'm doing, you guys can see, I'm just holding this and I'm just pushing it down on the wheel pad more than I'm not trying to like push it into my piece. I'm just trying to pin this in place. So I want this to stick to the wheel head and just hold this in the center. And this is my tool that I'm going to use the most for trimming it. I forgot like the most important steps. I'm going to use this. Yeah. So one thing I want to do before I flip it upside down is see how deep my piece is, how deep the bottom is. So I tend to use this tool a lot because it's got a straight side. So camera, straight side. You guys, straight side. I go across the top with that. Doesn't really matter as long as it's something that has a straight side. And then any tool, this doesn't really have to be straight. I just have to be able to drop it down to the bottom. I pinch those together and then flip that on the outside. And then I can see how thick that bottom is based on that. And the bottom of that cup is not very thick at all. So the bowl, I don't remember. We're just going to wing it. So, and then I also wanted to pay attention to my outside shape. So how well did I follow the contour of that outside shape when I did this? So this one is pretty good. This one, I can tell that this obviously comes out a little bit more. And I know the bottom of my bowl doesn't do that. So one of the goals when I'm trimming is to basically make the sides and the bottom uniform. So to even out that thickness. So if you had a piece that got extra thick at the bottom, this is your chance to kind of taper in that outside and make it more even. Doesn't have to be perfectly even. It can be a little bit bottom heavy, but you don't want it to be really bottom heavy. So I'm going to start with the outside, and then I'm going to take some, and I'm going to even out the bottom, and then maybe take some material out of the inside of the bottom. But I'm not going to do that until I do the outside because this is going to take some of the material away, and it's going to be less for me to carve when I do the bottom part. So I always start with my outside wall, and I'm going to ease in with my tool. And this is a little bit dry. It's not dry, but it's very fine. So I'm going to just dampen it slightly because I don't really want to be breathing stuff in right now. So my goal here is to try to keep this hand anchored so that I'm trimming as it comes to me and I'm not going up and down with the piece. The really rough stuff, you're always going to do that a little bit. So I always recommend using the smaller tool. You have a bigger loop tool, but the smaller loop tool, because it's removing less material at a time, it's going to offer a little less resistance. It's like cutting through a phone book, cutting through a few pages at a time with a pair of scissors is going to work a lot easier than trying to cut the whole phone book in half. So I'm going to go in and just try to hold this steady. And this is the hardest part, honestly, is not going in and out with your piece. So I'm anchored on my right leg. And I'm just trying to hold it steady as well. So sometimes I'll use even my square side and use just the very corner if I'm having trouble with it pushing on me a lot, and I'm removing even less at a time. So I'm just going to ease into this, and if I know what my shape of my piece is, and I didn't check this one before I turned it upside down, but I tend to know how I shape my bowls. So if I carve through this, then you'll get to see what that looks like. Just a little bit more. I feel a little bump in there, then let's see if I can kind of anchor myself a little better. I think I got it. And this is the one that got a little wonky anyway, so there we go. So when you feel, when you no longer feel that where it's pushing you out and in, you know that you got it pretty even. So my top is still not perfectly even. I got cut a little rough, but that feels pretty good. So right now, a long time since I tapped to do that. So right now, I'm going to basically just make this top part level. And so I'm going to do that. I can start on the inside or the outside. I'm starting on my inside because my outside is a little uneven. So I'm hoping that if I ease into this, yeah, see a little bumpy there. A little better. So my inside, it feels like it's up a little bit. I do not want it to be sticking up in the middle, or my bowl will rock when I set it down. So I'm going to make a little bit of a spiral here. The slower I go, the less that'll happen. Okay, so this feels pretty even. I'm going to go ahead and make a little bit of a foot ring. So that means I'm going to have my outside raised a little bit compared to the rest of this. And I'm not sure if this is thick enough to do this, but we're going to give it a shot, see it, because I've said this and I want to be able to show you what I'm talking about. So again, if you feel better going from outside to inside, it doesn't matter, really. Whatever feels right. So like when I'm working, once I have it centered, I'm going to just stay on the right side of my piece, or the piece that's going away from me, the side that's going away from me. So if I was a lefty and I was throwing clockwise, I'd be working on the other side. So, and this is a good indicator that my clay is where I want it to be, is that those pieces brush off, they're not sticking back down to the piece. If they're sticking back down to the piece, then I would say you probably need to let it dry a little bit longer. So now if I wanted this more even, so I got a little spiral going in there, and as much as I love that little spiral, it makes it really challenging to sign it sometimes. So I'm going to use the flat side of my tool. I could at this point probably pull out the big loop tool and use the flat side of that. That would be okay. I can also go over this with a sponge or with another tool. I'm just going to clean this up a little bit. It's not as even as I would like it to be. I can't even tell you how long it's been since I trimmed something. And then I'm going to actually, I think I have enough space down here. I feel like the bottom of my bowl is wide enough that I'm going to actually go in a little bit on the outside. I'm going to try to bring it around so you can see. So that I have a definition between my foot ring, or my foot of my bowl, and the bowl itself. I just really like that. And if I make a little bit of a ledge, it gives me something to hold on to when I'm glazing. It also gives me, if I make that dramatic enough, it gives me a little bit of a catch for my glaze. So if my glaze gets a little bit thick and it wants to drip down, then it'll have somewhere to stop. It may not stop it completely, but it might at least slow it down. I'm kind of feeling this. So when I was coming along here, it felt like this was still bulging out a little bit compared to the rest of the bowl. So I think I might have a little bit of extra thickness, and I'm really hoping that that's true. All right, so I have a little bit of some ridges going on there. I'm going to use the middle of depth for a little bit. So I can just kind of scrape with the flat edge of that. And if I want to get really fancy, I can actually varnish it with the, with the surface of it. And that's nice and smooth. I can do the same thing inside here. I can varnish it with that. It's slightly soft enough that I can push it down. Or honestly, I can also go in with a sponge and just kind of smooth it that way. And that's a little gentler, and it's a little less scary. Okay, let's see what happens when we flip it over now. So that So yeah, I did have some extra thickness on the bottom. Okay, I guess that's right. My bottom's not as smooth as I would like it to be. This is probably not a keeper, but so when I feel the thickness here and the thickness here, it now feels nice and even, and the bottom feels pretty even. So at this point, I would go ahead and put it upside down again. And with a pencil, which I do not have handy, or like a ballpoint pen, you know, somewhere, I would go ahead and sign the bottom of that. I would want to do that before. I always want to do that before I forget about it, and before it gets too dry. And the needle tool will work, but it tends to leave like really sharp edges on that signature when you flip it over. So I like using something with a little bit of a rounded surface. So pencil that has can round down a little bit, or like especially like if you have an old ballpoint pen that doesn't work anymore, it's just a nice rounded tip, and then it leaves a nice mark, and my clay is nice and firm. I can just brush my little crumblies right off of it, and I'm ready to go. So at this point, I would check it for any other little things that I want to fix on it. So my inside's a little uneven. I might go in with a handful and see if I can carve that out. Like I've got where it kind of goes down, and there's a little bit of a ridge right on the bottom. But this area, so my lip of my bowl, rim of my bowl, I should say, I'm gonna just make sure that's nice and smooth. If I have anything in here that seems like it's not smooth enough, I can kind of go over that quickly with a sponge. So anything that feels at all sharp now, when it's fired, is going to be really sharp because it's going to be super hard. And I can check it again when it's dry, and I can still sponge it when it's dry. I don't want to sand it when it's dry. If you do, I think I've talked about this before, you want to kind of do it like with a respirator on. And respirator, I mean not necessarily full-on respirator, but the N95 masks, the ones that are double layer with 2 bands and the thing around it, which are really hard to find right now, but that's what you want to be wearing whenever you're doing that, so you're not breathing that dust in. And then doing it outside, so you're not leaving the dust wherever you are. Even if you're doing it into a trash can, it's still gonna like get in the air, and then you're still gonna be breathing it. So, yeah, little bumps. So that's it. You guys can feel that whenever you get a chance to get a sense of like what it feels like.
And then how do you know which way to move it, like based on the needle tool? Is it just whatever side catches